I really think that's important to take the politics out of how we all feel about Trump and the Republicans, but just look at how they are communicating to the country and to the world every single day, every hour of the day, including the president. And he has really given us this historic, I don't want to say transparency, because we don't know about transparency till we learn about it in history. But what he's giving is accessibility in ways that the Biden White House would never do, ever. It's just night and day in how they communicate to the public. And the more you communicate to the public, the better of a shot you have every single day of winning over public support.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Progressive Podcast. Today we have someone that's pretty familiar to our audience, Michael LaRosa, former press secretary to Dr. Jill Biden. Michael, we had you on last time. I think it was a pretty long podcast, actually one of our best videos on YouTube to date. So really excited to have you on, man. But yeah, what's up? What are you doing now? How's life treating you?
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Oh, I'm still in Washington and balancing corporate life, consulting life, political commentary life. So it's fun. I have no complaints. Post government and post White House, I'm having a good time.
Yeah, I mean, that's great to hear. I mean, I was only in DC for about 3.5 months, but man, I really missed California real quick. I think once
Yeah.
you kind of leave this, we are a little spoiled here with the weather, but we do pay a lot for housing. So I think there's like a trade-off there.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we can get that fixed in the state. But I think a lot of our viewers and a lot of people have seen you on Fox News, on just different interviews, on some online media recently, talking about Kamala Harris's new book, 107 Days. So I wanted to ask you, what is your takeaway from the book? I read the book too. She claims that 107 days was not enough. There are some people saying that it may have been too much time. What do you think of that? And yeah, overall, what do you think of the book and kind of what she's saying?
Yeah, a couple things. I mean, I was impressed that she took the punches that she took. She threw the punches that she threw.
Yeah.
Wasn't expecting that. And I wasn't expecting really a lot of I guess I wasn't expecting her to be as candid as she was. I certainly share a lot of her complicated feelings towards the Bidens and a lot of some of the disappointment and hurt that she felt. I can identify with a lot of that. I think that, and I'm also sympathetic to the 107 days argument to the extent that no president has ever done that to their vice president before or their party
Yeah.
before. Nobody, and I love President Biden, but what he did was extremely selfish. It was really selfish to do to the country. It's really selfish to do to the Democratic Party. It was selfish to do in general. It was just a selfish move. He had been running for re-election for over a year, and to dump that in his vice president's lap with 107 days to go is historic, and it should be studied, and it is unprecedented, as we say often right now. But that doesn't sort of excuse some of the tactical mistakes that I think the Harris campaign made. It doesn't sort of erase the problems she has as a candidate in general. And those are more personality related, and I don't know if those are fixable for her.
I mean, I agree with all of that. I think I've kind of saw her rise here in California. I was pretty young though when she ran for Senate, but I was still politically involved. I remember when she ran for Senate. And there's a real, I think, transformation because when she was in California politics, she was pretty well liked in California. Like when she ran for her AG race the second time, I'm pretty sure she ran unopposed. Her Senate race, she ran against another Democrat and just killed it, like just across the board. And then I think
It
even in the
helps that
Senate,
she didn't dab in the debate.
That is true. There's a whole moment of her opponent who was, I think, Congresswoman Loretta Sanchez, who did the little dab. And it's the debate camera turns to Kamala Harris and says, well, something about her being unserious. Funny moment. But I think even in the Senate, Harris was seen as a rising star. I think a lot of people saw her as, there were a lot of progressives saw her as like, oh, the younger female version of Bernie in a way. Um, and then she gets picked as VP. I think does like a good job in the debate. Enters the White House and she talks about this in the book. And I think Michael, we may have talked about this in the last conversation we had. The White House did not make it easy for her at all. I mean, they put her in charge of, technically it was like the roots of migration, and she actually did get some shit done. I
Yeah,
never heard about it until this book, right?
right.
And I guess after the interview on NBC when I think she was in Guatemala and she had that answer about, hey, I haven't been to Europe, you know, in comparison to the border, the Biden White House is like, yeah, we're gonna have you stop doing these interviews. And I think that didn't help her because how the hell are you supposed to get good at interviews when you do like one every like 3 months and you're a press secretary? So I bet you were yelling at them or just yelling at the administration to you got to get in there, you got to practice. That's how you get better. So I don't think the White House did her any favors at all. So can you talk a little bit about that? Kind of what you saw. I know you were with the first lady, but
Yeah.
the Biden team just sidelining Kamala Harris and even blaming her for stuff that she revealed in the book.
Yeah. So it is not unusual for the White House to sort of centralize decision making when it comes to how the cabinet and like the vice president and surrogates are used. I would say that they did when you compare how they used their surrogates, their vice president and, or say our vice president and our surrogates and our cabinet compared to this president, it is night and day.
Yeah.
I mean, most of these cabinet members were chosen, I think, even including to the vice president, Vance. They are battle tested, they're combat ready, and they are media trained. I mean, that is a big part in why he selected the cabinet that he has. From a public communication perspective, not a political judgment, but from a public communication perspective, they did extremely well in all of their nomination hearings. And they did it very differently than how Democrats prep our nominees. So I'll just I'll tell you a little bit about how that works. So whether we were in the White House preparing nominees or in the Senate, sort of how we would judge the not Republican nominees during Trump 1. The standard rule that Democrats like to follow is the 80-20 rule. That means as a nominee or as a witness, a cabinet witness going up to testify, you want the senators or the congressmen on the dais to be talking 80% of the time. We as Democrats, we want our nominees to be talking 20% of the time. We want this to be as limited and as newsless as possible. We want this to be a test of respect and civility and not a test of what you know or how hard you fight. That is the conventions and the rules that we follow with our nominees. This cabinet, this vice president, no way in hell. They are a true and accurate reflection of their boss. And they don't follow the rules, but by fighting back the way they do, the way you saw Pam Bondi slug back at Senator Blumenthal, even if whatever she was saying about him had nothing to do with the substance of what they were talking about, she defended herself, she counterpunched, and she got her message across more than what he intended to get across or communicate to the public. And they're all like that. So it's not only how hard they punch and how directly they communicate. It's also the fact that, and we talked about this a little bit off camera, but I do a lot of Fox News. I go on a lot of Fox News during the week. there probably isn't a time where I am not down the street at Fox News in the green room with a Trump cabinet secretary. So they are very intentional and strategic in a sense that they deploy these very combat ready, TV tested, politically tested surrogates, their cabinet and their vice president. They they engage, 100% engage, carrying out and selling and making the argument for the president every single day. They are on something, whether it's a podcast like this, whether it's Fox News, all like every hour, there will be a cabinet secretary or a regulatory agency administrator. You know, in prime time, I used to be a primetime TV producer on MSNBC. An energy secretary or a labor secretary or an FDA commissioner would not be the lead of any show, but they push their surrogates out and make sure they are on everything and that they are telling a story every single day. That was not how the Biden White House communicators wanted their cabinet or their vice president to be. And in the age of new media, it is baffling why we rarely ever heard from them. And then because the less you communicate to the public, the more attention and more scrutiny is placed on you when you do try to communicate in those rare circumstances or uh, as minimal as it was, which felt like that's what they were trying to do, is always run scared. And I think that's a constant theme with Democrats, and it's got to change. And I live by sort of treat the media like an opportunity, not a hazard. But my my fellow Democrats in Washington, at the staff level, the consultant level, and the candidate level, they just run scared. So
Absolutely.
I know that was a really long answer to your question, but I really think that's important to take the politics out of how we all feel about Trump and the Republicans, but just look at how they are communicating to the country and to the world every single day, every hour of the day, including the president. And he has really given us this historic, not, I don't want to say transparency because we don't know about transparency till we learn about it in history. But what he's giving is accessibility in ways that the Biden White House would never do, ever. Um, it's just night and day in how they communicate to the public. And the more you communicate to the public, the better of a shot you have every single day of winning over public support, meaning public sentiment about whatever you're doing.
100%. It almost feels to me like Trump, when he's picking these cabinet secretaries or even his vice president, it's like he's casting people to play the role of cabinet secretary more so than like the actual job, for better or worse. And I think we see that in some ways in their job performance. But I think that kind of, it reminds me of some of the debates about like Hakeem Jeffries right now, and Schumer, and how Democrats are kind of stuck in this old approach of, well, they're excellent at whipping people. Like they make the deals behind the scenes, which is part of the job. But I think in today's age, really, even the job of leaders in the House and Senate is to be public facing, to be like the online spokesperson for your side. And that feels like something we're really missing right now. Like Jeffries will give interviews, but it's not like the Republican version would be on 10 podcasts a week. I mean, even Mike Johnson, who's not the most charismatic person, does tons of interviews.
No, he's
it really just,
go ahead.
yeah, no, absolutely. And yeah, I just feel like we need to kind of think of it as we're picking people who are playing these roles on TV, and they need to be convincing and they need to be able to defend themselves in long form instances, and that like that builds trust in the institution. I think I don't think this is disconnected from the work of the job even. I don't think it's like an entirely superficial thing. I think part of the job is the ability to explain what your agency is doing in a way that makes people on your side.
Exactly.
I think that's something we need to do next time, is like approach it as I think the Gavin Newsom school of politics, and
Yeah, no,
he's the central casting for a president figure, and I think it should be top down like that.
agree. I totally agree with you. And you're hitting on like two things, a couple things very indirectly that are really important for everybody to sort of extrapolate from what you were saying. And first of all is the casting role that Trump plays. You're 100% correct, and he takes great pride in that. He was a TV producer, and image and presentation and communication is everything to him. You know, people say he hates the press or the enemy of the people. He says they're the enemy of the people. He wouldn't be doing this job if he didn't have access to the press every single hour of the day. And that's like the funny part about Trump. But it's also really, he's exposing the tools that a president has and can use if they choose to use it. You have a traveling press of a minimum of 13 press traveling with you in a protective pool wherever you go. You have access to the press in ways that nobody else does in the entire world 24 hours a day. In most of those hours, as the press will tell you, Trump White House is using them and using those hours to fill. With Biden and Biden White House, the people in the White House, not even just the older people, but even the sort of quasi middle generational people had no gut or instinct or feel for a contemporary media landscape and communicating in the frequency with the conviction that Trump and his surrogates do. Part of that is that they run towards the news. Trump, if you notice, Trump has an opinion about everything. He'll be asked about who's that young actress? There was that
Kristen
with the
Stewart?
the jeans thing.
Oh,
Sydney Sweeney.
Sydney Sweeney. Okay. Do you think Biden would ever answer a question like that? Do you think he would
No.
ever try to have an opinion on anything like that? And what do you think would happen to a reporter if they ever asked a question like that in the Oval Office? They probably would never be allowed back in, and the Biden staff would probably find some punitive way of taking action against them and their editors. But Trump knows and understands what people outside of DC are talking about, like your neighbors or your friends in your dorm or your housemates. He wants to be a part of that discussion. That's called culture. That's why he understands the pulse of where, like the sentiment of where culture is among voters. And so he's willing to give you his opinion. And he doesn't really care if you agree with him or not, but he shows conviction and principle when he gives his opinion. Kamala Harris rarely gave her opinion.
Michael, she was asked about Prop, what was it, Ben? Was it 67 or something in California about kind of reversing some of
re-raise the sentencing standards.
Re-raise the sentencing for like really bad shit. And they asked her this, and she goes, I'm focused on the election. I have no opinion on this. And they're like, man, but you're voting in California. You don't want to share to voters how you're voting on this issue. It just kind of shows how. And again, going back to the Trump point, he had, Michael, I'm not sure you know, but the NFL did a new kickoff rule this season. A lot of fans don't like it. I personally am like, it's beneficial if you can kind of run out there a little bit more. I like it because we get more yards, but a lot of NFL fans are like, oh, this is weak because you can't start running towards the returner until he like catches the ball and starts running the ball. And I think that's the new rule now. And Trump just sent out a truth social saying, this is weak. The NFL needs to go back to the old kickoff rule. And then all the NFL pages I follow, like the news and the meme pages, all posted it. And the comment section's like, he's right about this one. He's right about this one. So I can never imagine Biden even knowing that there's a new kickoff rule.
Even if he did, he would never weigh in on it because Democrats are afraid to alienate people. They want to please everyone. So they are scared to say who they want to win a Super Bowl. They are scared to say how they feel about the new NFL kickoff rule. They won't do that because they are so petrified of other Democrats or independents. They are scared of each other most of all.
Well, and the Kamala thing he mentioned, that's a perfect example where
I remember.
Yeah, she was kind of afraid of coming off as like too harsh on crime and alienating Democrats, and ended up passing with flying colors in California.
70% in California.
Yeah.
70%.
I mean, she is a politician, and that's why she probably won't have a future in elected politics, because when you don't show opinion, when you don't show principle, when you don't show conviction, when you only run based on fear, she's running out of fear. She's not running to give her opinion and educate you on why, or persuade you on why she's right. She is trying not to offend you. And that is not how you, one, win over hearts and minds of voters. But it's rare that you can try to maybe run out the clock and try to win that way. I mean, it's a risk, but Trump does not do that. He gives his opinion, and you can take it or leave it. Bill Clinton kind of did the same thing in the 90s. You know, you guys were probably not even born, but Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton did the biggest interview of all time, and they did it. It's the most watched broadcast interview, and it was like when he was being, when the details of his extramarital affairs were coming out right before New Hampshire primary. At Super Bowl Sunday, he goes on 60 Minutes, and Hillary Clinton was like, "Look, I love him. I respect him. That should be what matters. And if you don't like it, don't vote for him." It was that simple. And people kind of made their deal with Bill Clinton. The American people kind of made their deal with Bill Clinton, because in that interview, they were not saying that he didn't commit adultery. They were just saying, sort of our business.
If Hillary doesn't care, why should we care? That's what my aunt said. That's what she was saying at the time. And
that's a part of it. But it was also like, if we're working it out and we're going through problems the way every other marriage goes through problems, they're just being forced to talk about it in ways that presidents had never been forced to talk about it before that time. So the American people kind of made their deal with Bill Clinton. They made their deal with Donald Trump, which is why stuff like the Epstein thing is a losing fight. But we can get to that later. But staying on the communication aspect, Ben, you also hit on something when you were talking about Congress and picking our leaders, our communicators, like the people who are out front for us. And we're really behind the curve, and that's because Democrats have always had a seniority system. That's why we have more older members of Congress than they do. Everything was built on seniority with Democrats. Our party just does it differently. They have chairs that are only allowed to be chairs or minority ranking members on committees for terms. We don't. So whenever we have a Supreme Court hearing, you know what that means? It means that our members are always going to be our members who have the primetime seats and have the first couple of questions, the time to make news, the time to ask the toughest questions, used to always go to the most frail, oldest members of the Democratic side.
Dianne Feinstein wasn't our best soldier to fight the communications battle?
Yeah, Patrick Leahy. Yes, exactly. All those things. But like you hit on exactly part of the problem, is that in and going back to what I was saying about how we treat our nominees and how we train them, and how we're so married to process and procedure and norms and conventions and traditions. Look where that's gotten us.
It's gotten us with the second term of Trump. I mean, I think we just, like you say, we just are too afraid to change the rules or kind of buck leadership in a way that I've seen.
Yeah.
Like, just go back on you going on Fox News. I've heard from, different political people that work in politics that, hey, we've been told don't go on Fox News, don't go on like the more conservative leaning podcasts. And I'm like, you, to excuse my language, you idiots. You are not going on those podcasts and those channels to be friends with the host. Like, you don't go on Joe Rogan to Me and Joe Rogan agree on everything. You go on Joe Rogan because his audience is the #1 audience in the entire world when it comes to podcasts.
It's
You go
about
there
I
to
do
talk
think
to them.
people are coming around on this a little bit. I do think like this has
They're
been
starting
kind of a
to.
major lesson of the last election. Hopefully
But
it
there was
continues.
pushback. But Ben, there was pushback on Congressman Ro Khanna going on like Benny Johnson's podcast, and he talked about the Epstein files. Congressman Ro Khanna actually made a lot of good points about, hey, the Trump administration is kind of hiding some of this stuff from us. And I guarantee you, Johnson's audience probably has never heard many of those points.
exactly right. And Newsom got a lot of shit for going on Charlie Kirk's show. And the way I see it is by going on all these Fox shows, even on like Hannity, when I go on Laura Ingraham, when I would go on Jesse Waters, their audience is getting a point of view that they otherwise wouldn't be getting. And even if I don't get the most time, or even, if I don't get to say everything that I could say, they're at least getting an exchange. They're getting a debate. They're getting a point of view that they maybe would not otherwise get because we all live in our silos, right? But Fox goes out of their way to bring in disagreeable point of views from mainstream Republican, the audience that people think of when they think of Fox. MSNBC doesn't do that. You won't see me on MSNBC. I'm way too moderate for MSNBC. I'm way too pragmatic. I'm way too realistic. I'm probably too capitalist now. They won't have me on, and so because they don't want me critiquing the Democratic Party. Why would they ever want that? And it goes back to, why were they so shocked when Kamala Harris lost? Well, if you were paying attention, if you were looking at voter registration rolls, you could analyze momentum based on that. And you knew by September, it was never going to happen. Never going to happen.
Michael,
Yeah,
I
and
just
I
real
think
quick want to, yeah. Oh, okay.
just
I'll go. Mike,
when
just want
Fox News even has Democrats on, like they had Mark Kelly a few weeks ago, like they do well enough that Trump was really furious about it. He was tweeting through a whole tantrum, turning on that reporter he likes, Ducey, because he thought Mark Kelly came off looking too good.
Yep.
So like it can work, and
Oh,
it
yeah.
pisses off Trump too.
Totally. But like, I get a lot of feedback when I go on there from people who will DM me on different platforms, whether it's X or Facebook, or a lot of Facebook, but X, Instagram, LinkedIn. I get so many like audience viewers who will say, I don't agree with a thing you said, but like, you come off as having common sense and you come off respectful, and we didn't, and they don't, it's like they don't expect that. And if you can do that, then you have the ability to get to reach, like, I'm reaching them. Doesn't mean they're always going to agree with me, but I'm reaching them. And there will be like closeted gay Republicans who are watching, who are like, it's so refreshing to see like a LGBTQ person or a gay person on Fox talking about X, Y, and Z things, and they don't feel comfortable saying that on a public channel or like a public Twitter or Instagram feed, but they'll DM me and say it. And I don't know. I just think that if more Democrats did that, the better off we would be. But it also has to be on like our own media silos, right? Like, I bet you guys are probably much more progressive ideologically than I am on various positions. You're West Coasters. I'm an East Coaster. I'm probably very moderate, radical moderate Democrat, but I want to win. And I
Yeah.
care about winning first and winning those arguments later. It feels like the MSNBCs and the really ideological left-wing media infrastructure, like the Pod Save Americas, they're not really interested in other point of views. They're not interested in other ideologies or ideological point of views. Sometimes they're interested in different tactics, but generally they don't have people on who disagree with them ideologically or politically. That's a problem. Like, they are the problem. Sadly, And Barack Obama, by the way, warned about that a long time ago, about media silos and only talking to ourselves. But nobody really on our team seems to have learned that, because Fox has a winning formula, the other ones don't.
Michael, why do you think that is? And when do you think it really started within the Democratic Party to kind of keep to yourself? I mean, I think the obvious answer is the sign right behind you. Uh, but when this culture started that, hey, we don't go on those channels that we may disagree with. We don't go on, different online news media that we may get pushback for X, Y, and Z. And when did that start? Um,
Great
I mean,
question.
I credit I think I blame a lot of Hillary Clinton's campaign in 2016 for some of this as well.
So it actually goes back a little bit before. It goes back to the first year or so of Obama. Look, Fox was really, really tough on Obama as a candidate. Obviously, right? The right saw Obama as a huge threat because he was popular, right? And liked, and had little record to run on, little standing to ever even beat a Clinton. With this guy with the funny name, a liberal law professor from Chicago. So they got off that was a really bad relationship. And Anita Dunn, who was in charge of President Biden's public relations, strategic communications thing, media, outer facing, external facing. She was the communications director under Barack Obama for those first year or 2 years. And she made that rule that they would not go on Fox, that in 2009, 2010. I don't remember. I remember her. I remember that was really the start of it. Of people saying, "Oh, we're like gonna be punitive and punish," and then again, I don't remember sort of how I was a TV producer in 16, so I was covering the
Michael
campaign.
Bernie, like him or not, Bernie would go on Fox News all the time. Like I remember in 2016, I would watch him do Fox News town halls. Like he still kind of does them. He's a little older now, but there was this whole why would you give up free media? Like that's my question. Why would you give up if Trump understands this, the right understands this, that is
Why would
free
you
media?
why would you alienate any
Yeah.
audience? That's what I don't get. Like, that's what it seems to be. Democrats, it's what they think. And it certainly was the case with Harris. You saw this. So fast forward now back to Biden from 2009. Let's go to our campaign in 2020. Jill Biden. I had Jill Biden, and we did in Iowa. We did Fox News Sunday. Shannon Bream, like a half hour. Questions on Hunter. We knew it was during impeachment. She was going to get hammered with everything. We did Fox. We did Bill Hemmer. We did Dana Perino. I'm trying to think what else. We did Fox at least 4 or 5 times during that campaign. President Biden didn't do it at all. And then we had this asshole kid who got caught lying on Fox, TJ Ducklow. He's just not even worth saying his name. But and then he had this rough interview with Brett Baer, and because Brett was saying, we hear Biden is reading from a teleprompter when he's reading script when he's at like fundraisers and stuff like that. By the way, he was. Newsflash. We all know now he was, but that's the answer. And TJ couldn't answer the fucking question. But and then after that, their feelings were so hurt. There was like this dicta again from Anita Dunn. No Fox ever. And so when we got to the White House, Jill, who did a lot of work with veterans and military families and even the president, getting the PACT Act across, there was no Fox allowed in the White House when I was there.
Well, and I think that points to the fact that it's not just going on these places, it's being the type of candidate and running the type of campaign that allows you to feel comfortable going on these places. Like
Bingo. Yeah.
being Yeah, and I mean, if you're like, you shouldn't be in a situation where you have to defend that on TV. Like, that's part of it, is being able to feel confident in any answers you give, because you don't have a candidate who
One
can't really talk, who you're having to defend, which is pretty indefensible.
1000%, Ben, you hit the nail on the head. And Democrats are confusing this right now. There's this big thing about like authenticity. Well, first of all, you can't train authenticity. You just are authentic, or you're not, right? And the only way you are perceived and judged as authentic is if you are accessible. That's what Democrats don't understand, because we still run scared. We still treat the press as a hazard, not an opportunity. And by doing that, we are guardrailing ourselves. So they're really, because it's all about control. Staff in politics, you will see as you guys get into politics, they want control, and Democrats think they don't need the press because we can just create our own media. We can create our own content. Well, that's fine, but then you can just read from a prompter the whole time, like Harris and Biden. How do you become are you perceived as authentic if you are just reading script all the time? You won't be. You won't be. And that's why Trump held press conferences, loved holding press conferences, loves it, loves gaggling. Went on.
Michael,
If
he
you
goes
can't
on
go on
media
Jesse
so much.
Waters, if you can't go on Jesse Waters and talk to the New York Times, you shouldn't be running.
Michael, he's on the media so much that those 2-3 days where he just wasn't seen by the media, everyone was speculating that he had died. That just shows that he's like in the media so much. But going back to authentic, and I was making this point, I think I was making this point to Ben on a couple episodes ago. You can't just put a 67-year-old politician on TikTok and have them do a TikTok dance and be like, oh, look, they're being authentic. This is how you be authentic. That's not how it works. Like,
No.
and the comment section shows that. They're like, why is this 7-year-old TikTok, like congressman, doing a TikTok dance instead of fighting for my healthcare? Like, you have to actually, and like you said, there's some people that are that are authentic. There's people that aren't. It's not something that you can like kind of build up. But what you can do is, let's say like a congressman likes fishing, post them fishing. I don't know, like whatever they like doing, and that in the public can kind of read through BS. They can see through BS.
Absolutely. So two things on that. First of all, you can't change people, right? And you can't change candidates, and you can't change politicians, but you can make them the best version of themselves, and making sure that they are always in a position to feel confident. Now, when it comes to giving their opinions, they should be able to give their opinions at any point in time. What the hell are we paying you for? Why would we want you to be our spokesperson if you're not going to answer a fucking question that 70% of the people in your state agree on? It's insane. It's insanity. People will forgive. Voters forgive a lot of things. Think about Trump. How many times he's changed positions, all the mistakes, all the gaffes, all the
January 6th,
all the slights, January 6th, all of the comments. People forgive a lot of things. They forgive vulnerabilities. They forgive mistakes. They forgive, I don't know, they forgive changing your mind, but they don't forgive phoniness. And they won't gravitate to you if they feel like you're only want the job because you want something else, and you're not willing to give your opinions in the run up to getting the job. They don't want people who just want the job and want to be in a little security blanket.
Yeah,
It's bizarre.
I almost feel like it's better to give, in most cases, like the slightly wrong answer in an interview than do the politician trying to avoid answering it at all. Like, I think that comes off much worse. And then on the authenticity, and on the authenticity point, I'm thinking about how there's a little Twitter discourse about this that I very much agree with. That the percentage of Democratic comms directors and people in charge of social media accounts who are gay men in their early 20s to 30s is ridiculous. And I think you were talking about, like, oh, if they like fishing, post fishing. There's the famous Tim Walz football tweet leading into the election where he did the
Michael, do you know about that?
Yes, I remember. Well, look, they did a
Well,
bunch of gimmicky things with him to try to
but
bring out his manliness and
yeah.
his growiness, and like,
It was
Well,
even worse, Michael,
this
because
was the
they
best
fucked up big
example, yeah.
time.
So for our viewers, so they did some sort of like Twitch collab with AOC playing Madden, which in and of itself I have some questions about that idea. Tim Walz put out a tweet being like AOC can do so, and I can run a mean pick six. Oh,
It's right here.
Yeah,
If you want
AOC
it.
can run a mean pick six, and I can call an audible on a play. And we both know that if you take the time to draw up a playbook, you're gonna use it. And
You don't
I
run
didn't
a
even
mean
realize,
pick six. That's the joke.
Yes, yeah, it's not a play that you run. It's a defensive stop. But
It just
but
happens.
I didn't even notice the end of the tweet too. Has aged interesting because like his actual point was clearly borne out as correct. Like they have been using Project 2025 in a lot of ways, but when you're making the point in this awful way that takes the strength of your candidate, that he's a football guy and he's supposed to bring this like masculine energy to the party that we've never had before, and you're using it to tweet this, and literally like such an avoidable mistake that like the Republicans, when they first picked Tim Walz, what the Republicans wanted more than anything was to discredit him as what Kamala was framing him as, which is Coach Walz, this like kind of conservative coded, like nice masculine guy. And this gave them the perfect opportunity to completely discredit that framing and like show
amount
that
of
he's a
people
phony
that
like
I
the rest
like,
of the party,
yeah.
which he isn't.
The amount
I
of
think
people
he
that
does
share
actually like
this,
football, but
the amount of people that share this with me that like weren't even into politics but just watch sports, they were like, Beleh, what the hell are they doing? Like, who approved this tweet? And I was like, I don't know, man.
yeah, like, and around the same time, like during the election when Kamala was nominated, and I know it was that summer. I was in a green room somewhere, and one of these, well, like a Democratic analyst or whatever commentator said, "Oh, the media is just mad because we don't need them anymore," meaning they can go around the media and do stuff like that. But look what happens. Script is still a script. Again, might as well just go read from a teleprompter like Biden and Harris. If you're just going to produce content that's scripted, just put out a press release, or put out, like, if you're just going to tweet that are just canned press releases and read like press releases, just do the email. Like, why tweet? Why need a digital person if you're not going to actually use the platform to have a real conversation, which is what it's meant for? There are Democrats who do that, like Schatz and Murphy, and a couple of others are good at it. Claire McCaskill used to be really good at it. And then there's other senators and politicians that put out tweets like their press releases. It's like, just go read from a prompter or just send the email to the press list at that point.
Yeah. And Michael, just going back on one of your points about voters can forgive a lot of things. I think what happened in the campaign is Kamala Harris had flip-flopped on a couple issues. And like you said, Americans will forgive you if you're flip-flopping and being
They wouldn't
authentic.
say it.
She wouldn't, but she could have easily said about the fracking issue, hey, as vice president, I've traveled the country. I've met with people who work in these industries. I've met with people who rely on these industries, and I've changed my mind. I'm not afraid to say, when I make a mistake, I'm going to own it up. And I guarantee you the overwhelming reception to that would have been, hey, she changed her mind. She got more information, but she would go, well, I didn't ban it as vice president. I didn't ban it as Well, first of all, you don't have the authority to do that. But like, what the hell is that?
No, it was worse than that. She said, my values haven't changed.
Oh, yes, the values. God.
So I was doing Fox that night in prime time, and it was when she was really being hit with the fracking stuff. And I was on Jesse Waters. And I said, first of all, fracking matters to a slice of Pennsylvania voters, an important slice, a slice that Biden was able to win. But it rarely decides elections in Pennsylvania. And all she had to do, she didn't have to call to anything. All she had to say was, as Joe Biden's vice president, look at the Biden-Harris record. We produced a record amount of crude oil production, higher every month of every year than any of the 4 years of Donald Trump's presidency. We unlocked 1.7 million acres of the Gulf of Mexico. We auctioned it off for leases. We greenlighted the Willow Project in Alaska. What more should I have to show you about how much I care about oil production? I'm not going to take away your oil jobs. Just look at what I've done. And that's all she had to do was talk about our record. But why do you think she wouldn't talk about our record? Her own record as vice president, to the extent that a vice president can have a record. Why do you think she wouldn't talk about it? Because it was like what you guys brought up about the 70% of the voters on that California ballot measure. She didn't want to offend anybody. She didn't want to offend all. She was more scared of the liberal Green New Deal folks not showing up for her that she wouldn't even talk about the Biden-Harris record of 4 years of oil production. An issue that, by the way, that Biden, our administration, outperformed the previous administration on, that they knew it and they would lie about it. And she wouldn't even use that to her advantage because she was so scared of other Democrats, so scared of the green left.
That's like even extra ridiculous to me because, for better or worse, like clearly the main issue that group of people cared about in this election was the Gaza stuff. And like, if you were gonna be so afraid of that, like, I think there were more ways to address those kinds of people through the Gaza stuff, or that should have been a bigger concern than that they're going to be that upset about fracking. I mean, like, I feel like the people who would care that much about fracking, you already lost from some of the Gaza stuff. Like, that's not the
it's
area
also
that
like
they care as much about.
These groups at the end of the day do vote for Democrats. Like the numbers
Correct.
came out. They overwhelmingly vote for They're going to vote for you regardless. And she could have also in that same conversation touted how they've invested in nuclear energy, in solar and wind, and like,
Right.
oh, Americans love the all of the above approach. There's so many ways to spin this.
It's exactly, but
it's the truth. You're not spinning it.
Correct. That's the point, right? She didn't have to spin anything. She didn't have to deflect on anything. All she had to do was talk about our record on oil production, how it was better than theirs. Trust us, not them. And then she can go in and talk about all the great things that the IRA invested in. But like, answer the question, have a freaking opinion, and stand on your principle and on what you've done. Stop running away from your record. That's what she did.
Did you see that recent Cory Booker? He did a podcast interview with, I forgot her name. She's pretty big now, and I love her. She's like great. She's like Ben, do you know who I'm talking about? She's a big podcaster right now. I totally forgot her name. She's from like Oklahoma. But she asked him like a question about Israel, Gaza, and he like tried to spin it. And she was like, just give me a yes or no answer. Like, just please just give me a yes or no answer.
Yep.
And it's like and I think the problem that Democrats are facing is when they go on like the news channels, they can do that. That's easy to do because you have 10 minutes, right? You're going to have to go on to the next question. When you go on online news media, when you go on podcasts, they have time to push you back on that. And I think not everyone should be going on those online podcasts. That goes back to I just don't think some people can handle it.
Those are the formats that you go on when you want to expose a side of yourself that maybe people haven't seen already, that you want to communicate that you are like a human being, because in those formats, they're meant to be conversational. They're not meant to be 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 20 minutes. And I guarantee you, when that campaign was probably negotiating with Joe Rogan, it was all about parameters. And parameters, the guardrails, those were the things.
He had to come to DC. It had to be an hour long. There had to be.
Never. They probably wanted to keep it to 20 minutes or 15 minutes.
But that's insane.
You would never give anybody, a Democrat would never give anybody longer than like a 10 or 15-minute interview. That would be unheard of. So these are long formats. Like what we're doing right now, that is what you're going to see more of, but you can't do what Cory Booker did. You have to at least in those formats, you have the opportunity to explore the nuts and bolts and explain how you feel. Say how you feel and then explain it. Say how you feel and then try to get people to your side, persuade them, educate them, but don't run away. Don't duck and cover. I mean, might as well just bring Joe Biden back and duck and cover from everything. That's all they did. That's all
I
Harris
love
did.
the
Duck and cover.
I love the point about spinning things, because I think when we're talking about what the difference is between like cable traditional media and these online forms is, I think giving a politician style answer where you spin things is very accepted and normalized in these cable
Yep.
formats. And you kind of see it
Yep.
where there's almost a little dance they do with the interviewer, and the interviewer is kind of like, oh, okay, like kind of acknowledges that they're giving a politician the
So
answer, but they'll accept it. And so you try to take that same spinning approach to things to online media, and they're like, what the fuck is happening? Like it just
so
it's so
let me
jarring in that environment.
I'll let you in on the joke, because when you're a comms director on the Hill or in campaigns, and like at least on the Democratic side, there are these conventions that we follow. One of them was as part of media training. This is how outdated and tone deaf it is. It is never answer the question. Answer the question you want to answer. So what they're saying to you is actually, it's okay to be a phony. Don't accept the premise. Just change the subject and answer what you want to answer. That is central to democratic communicating and messaging. Is never answer what they ask. Answer what you want to answer, what you want to push. The problem is, it doesn't work anymore, because you're not talking anymore in just 5 or 10-minute segments on MSNBC or Fox. You should do those, sure. But if you're going to go on Joe Rogan, if you're going to go on the Progressive podcast, if you're going to go on any digital show, any long format show, you better be prepared to give your opinion and answer the question. Answer it, and then go into all your supporting blah 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 bullshit, you know, that your staff wants you to get across or push that message. And you guys, like, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, cable at both MSNBC, Fox, CNN, they just became places for politicians to push a generic message. They weren't actually conversations. They're not actually challenging. They're not actually even interviews sometimes with politicians. It is give them an opportunity to push their message. And that's what the Sunday shows became. It's what cable has become. And, you know, you can get away with it. You can get away with it, but you can't on formats like this. And now these are the formats that really influence voters, because, again, it goes back to authenticity, showing a side of you that they don't either expect or know. And I like the vice president a lot. She was a good vice president. She was a good number 2. She transferred seamlessly into that role. She's not comfortable, nor will she ever be comfortable, showing human sides of herself. And like Hillary Clinton, maybe she doesn't feel like she owes that to anybody. That's fine. But meanwhile, kind of like how Nixon had to learn television, the rules have changed, and the expectation for how you communicate to a voter and form the opinion, how you form an impression in the voter's mind of who you want them to see you as, those expectations have changed based on Donald Trump. And he changed the rules because he communicates directly and with anyone. And one of the
Yeah.
other things, Ben, the other things that Democrats will often say to their candidates, as if it's like some kind of media training, or it's included in part of the old playbook, is don't give it attention. Don't give it oxygen. Let's just hope and pray it goes away. I mean, that is what the Clinton campaign did a lot of. It's what the Kerry campaign did. It's what the Harris campaign did on the trans ad. There was no counter response. There was no counterattack. But most importantly, there wasn't a counter response. So let's just hope and pray it goes away. Don't give it attention, because if you respond to it, you're giving it attention and giving it legs. That's the traditional thinking of Democratic media trainers, like the Anita Dunns of the world, who, they were the power center of the Democratic Party up until a couple months ago. They ran the public relations component to that to our White House. And this is how they viewed the world. This is how they viewed the approach to political communication. The problem is the news cycles move so fast. If you don't respond to something, most people, even your supporters, will probably think it's true. Unless you punch back, unless you respond. I love the Bidens, and I love their family. But the fact that one of the things that Joe Biden was given in that deal I said people made with him in 2020, he had a lot of goodwill. They didn't necessarily love him, but he had goodwill because people generally liked him. They didn't dislike Joe Biden. They didn't necessarily agree with him. You guys probably didn't necessarily love him and want to vote for him. You were like, fine, take him. But when the Republicans started dragging his family through the mud and accusing them of being corrupt and all these egregious things, and let's, for the sake of argument, forget whether they're true or not. The president has the biggest bully pulpit in the world, and he was nowhere to be found. He was nowhere. He wasn't defending his son. He wasn't defending his family. He wasn't defending his own honor. He wasn't using the bully pulpit of the White House. He has the press right there. He can do whatever he wants. They chose just
How about
not.
the bully pulpit of a Super Bowl interview? He didn't even use that. The biggest opportunity to the biggest audience possible.
Correct. And you know what? And you know what came 3 days before the Super Bowl? They had already decided not to do the Super Bowl. Then the Her report comes out. And it's like, you know what? I think I tweeted it. They would be better off just changing their minds and doing it. They need it now more than ever. And by the way, you guys, remember what I said about the Clinton CBS 60 Minutes interview? It was Super Bowl Sunday. They could have done another Sunday, but they chose to do the highest rated show on the highest night of the year with the most viewers ever they would ever get to talk about the most uncomfortable subject in the world. Because they ran into the fire the way Trump runs into the fire. Democrats run scared. You're seeing it in Virginia with Abby Spanberger and that guy who's running for attorney general. She won't distance herself. She won't answer a question on trans sports, even though she has 3 kids in Virginia public schools, but she won't answer the question.
Yeah. In fact, that debate clip was exactly what I had in mind when I was talking about that it's better to give like a slightly wrong answer than it is to avoid giving an answer at all. Because when she was on that stage, it was so excruciating seeing her like get asked the question over and over and like try to give a politician's
Michael.
Yeah, and I didn't even see the debate. I just saw her like a man on the street interview with a reporter, and that was terrible.
And this is an issue where, like it or not, 70% of Virginians and 75% of the country agrees with the Republicans on, including a majority of Democrats. So it goes back to like, man, what are we doing?
Look, I'm a former NCAA swimmer and gay and Democrat, but I'm not there. It's okay to say like, I'm not there. Like I'm not for parity in with trans athletes. I'd love to see more science, but no, the answer is no. And as a parent in a state that you're running to be the governor of, to lead, and you won't answer a question that 70% of Americans and Democrats are in one space on. Even Sarah McBride, the trans member from Delaware, she's so smart about this. She's like, why would you ever like make yourself vulnerable to something like that? It's not even the top 5 of issues that is important to people. Give people space and grace. That's how we got there on gay marriage. And eventually maybe we'll get there on the trans issue. Recognize your audience, understand your audience, understand what you need from them. Let's win the election and win the arguments, figure out how to win the arguments later.
Yeah,
Yes, like
agree with that.
staying on that battle and defending it to the death for the 0.001% of trans people, which is already a 0 whatever percent who are affected by the sports issue, it ends up putting the overwhelming majority of trans people in way more danger because we end up losing the election and Trump is in office. And then it trickles down. I mean, we've seen support for gay marriage go down as we've kind of shifted our focus to defending the trans sports issue.
Yeah,
When that was didn't need to
and now
happen.
right, and in the Charlie Kirk shooting, now it's becoming like this issue of like, are trans people inherently violent, or like, is there something like? There's all these extraneous discussions as a result, and the Democratic response is always Abby's response, which is, "Oh, I don't want to politicize kids' sports or kids' schools, or this is not an issue. It's only an issue to the right." So if it's not an issue, then answer the freaking question, because the question keeps coming up because we're too scared to answer it honestly.
If you don't feel like it's an important issue, how about you take the side of 70% of the country as a baseline? Like that should be the default if you don't think it's important.
Or Ben, even just take a position at all. Even if you want to be with the left. I don't think that's the right way to win, even in a state like Virginia. I don't know if that position is going to be helpful to you, but I don't think dodging and weaving and pivoting and doing verbal gymnastics over it is going to help you either.
Yeah, I would probably think that giving some sort of like full-throated defense of it probably wouldn't be a great idea, but I think that would be more successful than just walking around it like you pretend you don't have any take whatsoever.
People respect that you have an opinion, and that's more important than showing that you're scared of somebody or something.
Yeah. Well, Michael, thank you so much. I know that you do have a meeting you got to run to. We really do appreciate it. Let's have you on again, man.
Whenever
Let's have
you want.
On again.
I know we can go down some rabbit holes, but it's
so many
interesting discussion. You know, there's a lot of how we communicate to the public is going to be sort of defining for our presidential candidates in 28. And so it's important that the stuff that you guys are observing and bringing up to me, you're totally right. And you have good instincts and you have good observations because you're seeing a lot of the same things I am. And if we see it, you know, like that's going to impact how which candidates we support, to be honest with you. If they can communicate to us what they believe.